computer again.
Take two. You know what I really hate about Paul Thurrott?
I can't stop screwing around with stuff.
We're recording.
It's like the fire's hot. And I'm like, I know.
We're recording, and he's like, you know what? You know what would be a great time to do is screw with my
I'm going to
connection.
shake the computer and see if I can make the Ethernet cable come loose.
This is the second recording of this episode.
Intense,
at least the first, 5 seconds of it. Because Paul was like, ooh, what if I press this? And then his connection went down.
I am literally a child. But anyway, go on. I'm sorry.
I don't even know.
OBS, you were saying.
Yeah, well, I was annoyed at
OBS. Not like...
Whatever. OBS is great, but it's bad because it instantly records. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter anymore. We're curious. So I thought it was an invite-only thing.
Okay.
The Arc browser.
Yeah. Well, what happened was, so last year, I don't know, it's like May something, Arc said, hey, we're coming out with the Windows version by the winter. Yep. You can join the wait list. So I did, right? I forgot about it. And then, I don't know, sometime in early mid-December, they emailed me and said, good news, you're in, so it's not like I was invited because I'm special. I just was, on a wait list. So,
I mean, I could argue you're special.
Especially, I am special in certain ways, that's for sure. I get little stickers and stuff. It's fun. So there's a sticker for not touching your computer while you're recording a podcast. So yeah, I mean, I've been kind of using it off and on. I finally I've been, I experiment with stuff, but very explicitly looking at Arc browser, maybe go back and look at DuckDuckGo. And I actually used it over probably 4 or 5 days on one computer. And honestly, I think that's something to look out for. It's just that it's so incomplete. They don't have extensions or any account sync anything. And, it's just a little too raw, but DuckDuckGo, I think people trust this company and it's going to be private and secure. So if something like Brave turns you off a little for whatever reason, I mean, this might be something to look out for. Arc's different. Like you could go down a real rabbit hole trying to figure out what this company's doing because they're they talk a lot or write a lot or make videos a lot about their little ideals and whatever. And they see, the internet, the browser almost as an OS or a platform or something, which, makes sense on some level. It's Chromium based. So you have to, I'm sorry, those things don't follow. It's Chromium based. So that's good in some ways because you get that compatibility and performance and all that, but you're going to want to install extensions for tracker blocking and ad blocking and things like that. And then it becomes safe. It is really complex to get used to. But, like a lot of tools, like Notion is like this. If you look at Notion, there are like 1,000 little options everywhere. It's weird. And everything works a little differently. If you're used to OneNote or any simple markdown note editor, whatever, Notion, frankly, is, it's actually kind of complex. I mean, it does a very basic thing if you wanted to, but, Slack is like this too. And so we're 25, 20, we're almost 30 years into web browsers, right? I mean, we kind of get it. And the problem is all of that muscle memory, I keep calling it that. I guess it's just memory. Kind of works against you because your experience doesn't always translate to what's happening in this browser. Here's something. This is a great tool for power users. If you've ever used Visual Studio Code or Terminal app in Windows, you might know that it's like Control-Shift-P, right? Brings up a command bar kind of a thing, and you can type commands, and then they auto-complete and whatever. And this browser actually works exactly the same way, except it's Control-T, which is normally for tabs, right? And then you can use it to either look from the list and see what's in there or start typing, and it lets you get to open tabs where they have their own little UIs around spaces and folders and whatever content you have in the browser. And then you can just use it like an address bar and just start typing a search. And it will search with whatever your default search engine is. It's a weird product. I mean, I don't know. I can't say like it's the future of web browser. I mean, it might be a little too much for most people. You can also have multiple spaces. So the tabs are always vertical. you can have multiple spaces all with their own little color scheme and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
There's favorites that are across all of them. There are things that are pinned that are unique to the space. It auto clears out open tabs every 24 hours, I think, by default, and you can change that, but they're always sort of available. So they're not in the browser taking up space and memory, but if you want to get them back, Control T, start typing, you're like, I know I was doing this, and you can go get them back. Like it's just it's different. I don't know how else to say it. I mean, but there's a lot there. I don't know. I think for people, who might read the site and maybe watch this podcast, it might be right in the wheelhouse in the sense that it's very capable. And if you take the time, I bet there are people, who are technical like us and like this stuff that would be like, yeah, actually, this is hitting on a level that's very different.
Yeah, I'd be very curious. Does it have to be linked to an account, or do you just need to install?
There's no account. Oh, no, I'm sorry. That's not true. There is an account. Yeah, you have to sign into an account. So that might be a thing because it's in beta. Like right now, I think what they're trying to do is prevent people from getting into it without, being invited. I think that's what the account's all about. So I think eventually there won't be an account necessary. But to my knowledge, I'm not even sure if there's sync, to be honest. There must be, though. There must be, but
yeah, I'd be curious to see how it would work for like me, who I live a lot on the web just through what Stardock does. Like we use Jira on the web. We use our e-commerce is all on the web. Obviously, our website's on the web, and so.
Right. So, do you use vertical tabs first of all?
No,
so you'd have to get used to that because there's no way you can't turn that back because the UI is very specifically the sidebar. Now you can hide it and you can resize it to a certain point, right? But it's there. The tabs are going to be on the left, so there's that. I don't use vertical tabs, and I don't know, but I don't know. There's a part of me it's like, oh, maybe, maybe. I don't like that it's not kind of private and secure by default. That to me is a huge mistake, and I don't quite get that. But then again, so's Opera. I mean, I've been looking at different browsers lately. Like Opera has some weirdnesses of its own. Like one thing about Opera that I find a little odd, and I looked into this. I'm like, this can't be right. They have an interface that's kind of their new tab/home display. You can't make it like you can install an extension that is a new tab page like Momentum or Bonjour, which is the one I'm using now. You can install that in Opera, but you can't make it the new tab view. Like they have their own thing called speed dial, and you actually can't replace it unless I'm completely missing something. So every browser to some degree has like I don't know, some difference. But when you look at, I don't know, Brave, Opera, Vivaldi, Edge, in Chrome, right? They're all very obviously similar, and probably by design because that makes it easy to switch. But when you look at Arc, you're like, what is this thing? Like it's different. So I don't know. Maybe people going from OneNote to Notion have the same.
Yeah, I mean that was a pretty big shock to the system.
This is what one of the appeals. One of the things that's appealing about Loop, if they ever get it right, which is that it looks and works like Notion. But it supports all the keyboard shortcuts it used to as an Office user.
Right.
So when you want to do things like make headings or change the formatting of text, in Notion, it's a very weird, it's almost like a WordPress thing where each thing you do is like a block and you have to click those dots on the side and change to or something. So you have to get used to that. And also, by the way, get used to the fact that no other app on earth works like that. So there is that little bit of a I don't know, learning curve, I guess. So Arc has this, and it's weird because we, like, you say, we all spend most of the day in a browser, right? So we really have developed, style or habits and traditions almost. I mean, and Arc breaks about 50% of them, and
fantastic.
Yeah, no, man, it's hard. It makes it hard, right?
Yeah,
I can invite you. I can invite you into Arc, by the way. I think I got a thing about
hook a brother up. I'll forgive you for screwing with your PC as we started recording. We'll call it.
I think so. It's in here somewhere. I'll find it. Bring a buddy to Arc. You're a buddy. I'll bring you.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll do that later. Not now. Let me just. Shake the computer.
It's gonna
This
be
sends an
tomorrow
email
morning.
to
Like, hey,
Brad, right?
be tomorrow morning. Like, hey, is that invite in the mail?
Yeah, exactly. No, I left it open, so I'll remember. Right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting, I think, is the phrase.
It is interesting. It's I guess I tend to I guess I prefer no, I definitely prefer things that are kind of minimalist, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I like about, one of the things at Brave, obviously privacy security, but then it's also they don't do a lot of UI innovation, and God bless them for that because honestly, the crap that's all over Microsoft Edge, which is another browser I've been reusing a lot recently because I'm going to update the chapters in the book
Mm-hmm.
again, and it's always such a slog getting through this UI. It's like you're in molasses all the time, and they do a little too much, I think, on the front end. Brave barely looks at it. I mean, in some ways, they almost need to look at it a little bit more. Like their menus don't scale very well, et cetera, et cetera. Um, but I like, obviously, I like what they did in the back end. Arc is not well. It's okay. Actually, Arc is a little minimalist in its own way. There are little icons all over the place,
Mm-hmm.
and you're like, "What's that thing?" And you mouse over it, nothing happens. And you're like, I have no way to knowing what this is unless I click on it. And then it deletes something on the site. Like, what the fuck? What was that? And there's no way to get it back. You can go get it back. But there's a lot of little bits where you're like, I don't understand what's going on here. Or keyboard shortcuts, like if you want to, there's no address bar, but you can select what is essentially an address bar. Control L works, which is a common across all browsers, all
Mm-hmm.
platforms. But in Windows, we're kind of used to Alt D, right? Alt D, yeah, Alt D. And that does not work. In fact, if anything, it probably does something else, which is one of those problems. If that's the muscle memory thing. Like you like Control T, and you're like, oh, what the hell is this thing doing? It's putting up like like the search box you get on the
Yeah.
Mac that's in the middle of the screen.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of how the command palettes work in Terminal and Visual Studio Code. Whatever the name of this thing is,
Mm-hmm.
it's the same thing. It appears in the middle, and then as you type, it drops down results. Actually, probably results from the beginning too. But it's like it's a navigational thing basically. I mean, but it's overloaded. It's not just like it's everything in the browser. If you use, like you said, Jira and whatever apps you might use at work,
Mm-hmm.
they have this system of you can have favorites obviously, and those will be in every space. I'm trying to get into the terminology here. You can pin things and you have to drag them up to do that. So they're always in that space and they never get, auto erased or whatever. And then they have this notion of favorites, which puts in folders, right? And so you could have like an app or a folder of just apps, or you could have individual apps. You could have a sidebar of just apps. There's all these different ways. Like if you are into very specific organizational schemes, like some ADHD disaster like me, you might really like this.
Yeah. See,
Because
that's
it's like,
the big. Yeah. We'll see. I'll give it a spin,
yeah.
and see if it can. If it
You
does,
have to give it time. You're going to be frustrated at first. It's just a little too different, and it's worth reading. They have documentation.
Yeah.
Obviously, there have been reviews. When it came out on the Mac, it's kind of worth like kind of boning up on it a little bit. It's because it is definitely an RTFM thing. Like you can't just like sign in and go. I mean, you could, but you'd have no idea what was going on. It is unfortunately that it's that next. It's a little too much. I could never. My wife would never use this. Never. Well, I shouldn't say that. I just think that barrier to entry is a little high. I don't think she would look at it and be like, yeah, no. But it's possible actually with time she could find it very useful. I don't know.
we're not.
Yeah. No, it is very interesting. It is very interesting. It does hit at that Slack Notion part of the market.